Hello, everybody. I'm BC Begley, and these are your news headlines for October the 14th of 2022. UK's Truss sacrifices finance minister, scraps tax plan in fight to survive. British Prime Minister Liz Truss fired her finance minister on Friday and scrapped parts of her economic package in a desperate bid to stay in power and survive the market and political turmoil gripping the country. Kremlin officials warn of catastrophic World War III. Russia has eerily warned the world that global carnage would ensue if Western allies of Ukraine continue to meddle in their conflict. They said World War III would be sparked if the West continued to intervene, and if a nuclear war was to occur, it would be, quote, catastrophic for all of mankind, should NATO approve Ukraine's bid to join its organization. A top Kremlin official threatened global destruction. January 6 panel subpoenas Trump, shows new video. The House January 6 committee voted unanimously to subpoena former President Donald Trump, demanding his personal testimony as it unveiled a startling new video and described his multi-part plan to overturn the 2020 election, which led to his supporters rioting on the U.S. Capitol. World's oldest practicing doctor, 100, has no plans to retire. A 100-year-old Ohio man who holds the Guinness World Record for being the oldest practicing doctor said he has no plans to retire anytime soon. Dr. Howard Tucker of Cleveland was initially certified as the world's oldest practicing doctor back in February of 2021 when he was 98 years and 231 days old. U.S. year-ahead inflation views rise for the first time since March. The United States year-ahead inflation expectations rose in early October for the first time in 7 months, and the long-term outlook also crept up, a potentially worrisome development for the Federal Reserve as it tries to keep views anchored. Mississippi River approaching record low water levels, threatening commercial traffic. Sections of the Mississippi River are approaching low water levels not seen in more than 3 decades, disrupting a vital supply lane for agriculture, oil, and building materials, and threatening businesses including barge and towboat operators, farmers, and factories. Turkey introduces jail terms for fake news. Turkey's parliament on Thursday approved a tough pre-election law that could see reporters and social media users jailed for up to 3 years for spreading fake news. The new rules cement the government's already firm grip on the media 8 months before a general election that President Erdogan enters trailing in the polls. Climate protesters throw soup on Van Gogh's Sunflowers painting. Climate protesters threw soup over Vincent van Gogh's painting of sunflowers in London's National Gallery on Friday to protest fossil fuel extraction, but caused no damage to the glass-covered painting. London's Metropolitan Police said officers arrested 2 people on suspicion of criminal damage and aggravated trespass. Suspect in Raleigh shooting is 15 years old and in critical condition, police say. The mass shooting in Raleigh, North Carolina, that killed 5 people, including a police officer, was carried out by a 15-year-old who is now in critical condition, officials said on Friday. The suspect, whose name has not been released, was taken into custody after a lengthy standoff, police said. Florida prosecutors file motion to interview Parkland shooter trial juror after alleged threat from co-juror. Prosecutors in the high-profile Parkland school shooter trial have filed a motion to have law enforcement interview a juror who reported feeling threatened by a peer on the panel. The juror told a support staff member that during deliberations, she received what she perceived to be a threat from a fellow juror while in the jury room. Alaska snow crab season canceled as officials investigate disappearance of an estimated 1 billion crabs. In a major blow to America's seafood industry, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game has, for the first time in state history, canceled the winter snow crab season in the Bering Sea due to their falling numbers. While restaurant menus will suffer, scientists worried that the sudden population plunge means for the health of the Arctic ecosystem. An estimated 1 billion crabs have mysteriously disappeared in 2 years, state officials said. It marks a 90% drop in their population. Russia orders evacuation in Kherson amid Ukrainian advances. Russian authorities ordered their military to evacuate the southern city of Kherson, Ukraine on Friday as Ukrainian troops continue to make gains in the area just north of Crimea. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Murat Kusnulin announced a military evacuation from Kherson, which has been occupied by Russia since early March. Saudis say Biden administration requested oil production cut to come after the midterms. President Biden's administration urged Saudi Arabia to delay cutting oil production by 1 month, putting it behind the midterm elections, the country said on Thursday. The Saudi government, which leads the OPEC oil conglomerate, rejected appeals from the United States last week and moved forward with cutting oil production, potentially causing gas price to spike in the United States before Election Day. North Korea fires missile artillery shells, inflaming tensions. North Korea fired a ballistic missile and hundreds of artillery shells toward the sea on Friday and flew warplanes near the tense border with South Korea, further raising animosities triggered by the North's recent barrage of weapons tests. Rare protest criticizes China's president days before Communist Party Congress. A rare protest calling for Chinese President Xi Jinping's overthrow was staged in the country's capital Thursday, days before the start of the Communist Party Congress, which is expected to cement his rule for an unprecedented third term. One banner called Xi a dictator and traitor of the country and demanded his removal. It also called for strikes. Animal populations shrunk an average of 69% over the last half century, a report says. Global animal populations are declining, and we've got limited time to try and fix it. According to the Living Planet Index, a metric that's been in existence for 5 decades, animal populations across the world shrunk by an average of 69% between 1970 and 2018. Australia floods. 3 states issue evacuation orders after heavy rainfall. Communities in 3 Australian states have been ordered to evacuate as torrential rain brings major flooding. Parts of the country have received up to 4 times their average October rainfall in just 24 hours. At least 500 homes have been flooded, 1 person has died, and another is missing as the disaster unfolds. NATO states back German-led anti-missile shield for Europe. At least 15 countries, mainly of the NATO military alliance, including the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, have signed a letter of an intent to join a long-term German project to create a European anti-missile shield that would boost protection for much of the continent. Heavy clashes seen across East Jerusalem amid surging Palestinian unrest. Rioting Palestinians clashed with Israeli police in several locations across East Jerusalem Wednesday night and early on Thursday, as forces continued to hunt for a Palestinian suspected of a deadly shooting attack on a checkpoint days earlier. Dutch Crown Princess moves back into palace due to security concerns. Dutch Crown Princess Catharina Amelia is under heightened security due to concern that she could be targeted by criminals. Dutch news agency ANP reported on Thursday, citing her parents. Amelia, 18, heir to the Dutch throne, began studying at the University of Amsterdam last month and had moved into an apartment in Amsterdam. But the royal couple now said concerns for her safety have forced her to move back to the royal palace in The Hague. Hundreds killed in Nigeria floods, more than 1.4 million displaced. More than 1.4 million people have been displaced and about 500 people have died in some of the worst flooding Nigeria has seen in a decade, the country's humanitarian ministry said on Wednesday. The statement added that 45,000 houses were totally damaged, 76,000 acres of farmlands were partially destroyed, and 70,000 acres of farmlands were completely destroyed.